Hello all. This is going to be a quick tutorial about bridging phrases. So we'll start off with the question, what is a bridging phrase? Well, a bridging phrase is used in analytical, so that's PE and essay writing, to create a link between the idea that has just been expressed and then the idea that will follow it. And this is usually within the same paragraph. It creates an idea of the relationship between the different arguments being made in a paragraph and helps to create cohesion. And cohesion is, if you're not familiar with the word, the skillful structuring and sequencing that's used within an essay to give it a sense of direction and a sense of purpose. And it also helps you to create a more compelling and convincing argument. So we'll just have a look at a quick further explanation of this. So imagine that you are looking at the Hunger Games and you've just expressed the idea that Katniss is a confident, self-assured character. And you want to follow that up with a reference to another part of the chapter or the novel that develops this idea further. In this case, you would want to use a bridging phrase to build from that first idea to the next idea. And the bridging phrase would make it clear what the relationship is between the two ideas or references. Now, the most common time that somebody needs to use a bridging phrase is usually when they are using a cross-reference quotation or if they are breaking a main quotation down. Often what will happen is people fall into what we call and next syndrome. So instead of having a sense of a developing argument, in their paragraph, it will say, here's the first quote, here's my analysis of it, and next the character says, quote, analysis, and next it says, quote, analysis, and next it says. And what we've got to do in place of those and nexts is we've got to get a sense of a developing argument, a sense of the relationship between each of the quotations that have been picked out and the ideas that are looked at from those quotations. So a good question is, why should you use them? Why is it good to use them? Well, first of all, they help to create more compelling and convincing arguments in your essays. Second of all, it shows that you understand the relationships between your ideas and that you can see patterns that exist in the development of theme and characterization, both within the scene or chapter that you're looking at, or perhaps even in the text as a whole. Thirdly, it creates cohesion. So again, that's a logical, compelling, and well-sequenced structure. So they act as like the glue between our ideas. Fourth, it's a desired skill when writing A-level and especially degree level essays. So again, looking beyond English, using bridging phrases is something which will be useful for you in any essay-based subject. Spoiler alert, that's pretty much every subject once you get to degree level, and almost all of them at A level as well. And then last of all, it's an important part for the here and now of your GCSE mark scheme. Just as a quick reminder of the success criteria, what we see here is that a top level response, top band response, shows assured personal engagement and a perceptive critical style. So cohesion and bridging phrases are part of having a perceptive critical style. They're also part of cohesive evaluations. So we can see that they have an important part and play an important role in getting you into the highest band and making you a better all-round essay writer for the future. We are going to take a look now at a paragraph from a Macbeth essay that could do with a few bridging phrases. So this is a decent paragraph, but it needs a little bit of additional cohesion and a sense of the relationship between ideas. So let's have a look. Shakespeare's portrayal of Lady Macbeth shows a contrast and difference in power to the social norms of the Jacobean society, as Lady Macbeth is presented as a woman with more power and control than her husband Macbeth, who normally would be the one in charge as the male. Firstly, Lady Macbeth is shown to be more evil and have more resolve, which is presented in "Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear." So you'll see in purple here that I've indicated that we need a bridging phrase and some cohesion, because we jump straight from the main quotation to a breaking down of the main quotation. And we need a little bit of a lead in. So in this case, this is a simple fix. We just need to rejig the sentence. So the person has then gone on to say is an imperative which is being used in Beth. So we can say here, we could use an adverb or we can use a temporal adverb. So what we could say is, firstly, Lady Macbeth issues the imperative, hie thee hither. So all we've done there is to rejig the sentence, and then we'll take out the previous bit. Nice simple fix for the first one. So let's have a look. Firstly, Lady Macbeth issues the imperative. We're just going to highlight this in purple so you can see where the change has been made. Hie thee hither to Macbeth, showing the imbalance between their power as Lady Macbeth is under control rather than her husband. It shows her control and willingness to control her husband, which contradicts the social norms. She is impatient and can't wait for the prophecies to come true, and we get an insight into her desperation to gain power. So great idea, well developed. We then get a big jump. It just says, the metaphor, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear. So we don't know at the moment what this metaphor has to do with the idea that's come before it about control and manipulation. So what we need to do is have a think about this bit, about control and manipulation, and then what's the idea that's get developed next. So next we see it says implies that Lady Macbeth thinks Macbeth is weak and needs to pour her spirit into him so that she can transfer her resolve. So the idea here is that we're going from control to a clear demonstrated example of how she will manipulate him. So then we can create our bridge between those ideas. So we'll use a connective to begin with. So furthermore, Lady Macbeth shows her desperation for power, status, and control through the way she intends to manipulate her husband, as seen in the metaphor, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear. So we've now got a link between the idea that came before. Furthermore, Lady Macbeth shows her desperation for power, status, and control. And then it links to the next bit as well, through the way she intends to manipulate her husband, as seen in the metaphor, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear. So let's carry on. Which implies that Lady Macbeth thinks Macbeth is weak and needs to pour her spirit into him so that she can transfer her resolve. This is another way to show that she is more dominant in the relationship and her self-confidence in her abilities, as she openly acknowledges that she is stronger and more evil than her husband. Now at this point we have got another problem in terms of cohesion and we need a bridge. The noun spirits has been broken down. We like breaking down of quotations. So let's have a look at the idea that's just come and the idea that's being developed. So the idea that's just been is that she is more dominant and she's self-confident and she's stronger and more evil. And then the next idea is that she has strength and resolve and she perceives herself as wicked and witch-like. So what we can do is we can pop in a bridging phrase that builds between those two ideas here. Okay, so Shakespeare, and I'm going to first call back to the previous idea. She's dominant, she's self-confident. Shakespeare accentuates the portrayal of Lady Macbeth as dominant and wicked. Okay, so that's the idea that we've just had. And what's the link to the next? So it's kind of about her being witch-like and being consciously evil. So Shakespeare accentuates the portrayal of Lady Macbeth as dominant and wicked by drawing parallels between her and the witches who were introduced as figures of evil earlier play. Again, as evidenced through the use of the noun spirits. So there what we've got is a reference back to what we've just looked at, dominant and wicked. This is kind of what we were looking at here. And then a link forward, so a glue between the two different ideas who were introduced as figures of evil. So what it does is it says, how is my argument developing? How is it changing? How is it evolving? And what are the links between the ideas here? So now what we've got is a much better sense of a developing argument and a much better sense of cohesion and a much better sense of the direction that this essay is heading in. I'm just going to run through a few useful phrases and words that you can use in order to create or open up bridging phrases. Most often, what you're doing within a PEE paragraph or an essay is building on ideas and developing them further, so making a more convincing case. So we've got some words that you can use here. So this accentuates, so Shakespeare accentuates Lady Macbeth's evil when he does or says such and such. We've got underscores. So our concept of Lady Macbeth's treachery is underscored when she says, or when Shakespeare uses the metaphor. If there's something that's repeated, we can say reiterates. So Shakespeare reiterates Macbeth's weakness in comparison to his wife later in Act 2, Scene 2. We've got amplifies. So something that's been shown already is shown even more greatly. So what we could say is our concept of Lady Macbeth's violence and graphic language is amplified in Act 1, Scene 7 when, and then we've got emphasizes. I think we're all familiar with that one. And then we've got further stresses. So when a writer returns to do something again at a later point than the one that you've looked at. So we might say the witches are indeed depicted as evil in Act 1, Scene 3, and Shakespeare further stresses this in Macbeth's subsequent meeting with them. So that's for building and development. You might also want to have a look at a contrast or a contradiction within the same paragraph. So it might be from our initial reading, Lady Macbeth appears strong, yet conversely, so it's like saying on the other hand, yet conversely, her language also reveals signs of frailty. We might say, use however. Macbeth is one of the most feared soldiers in Scotland and a brutal and violent warrior on the battlefield. However, when it comes to his life beyond the battlefield, he is, and yet would follow a point that we've made and then contradict it. So we might say, Lady Macbeth beckons the spirits and creates a bold portrayal of herself, yet there is still the hint or suggestion that beneath it she is insecure and doesn't feel she can go ahead with the murder. And we can say, despite this, again, it's going to contradict something that we've just said. So we might say, the witches might be seen as figures of evil. And then I might start my next sentence. Despite this, we might also raise issues about the fact that they are denied power and therefore have no other means through gaining agency. If we see something which is later contradicted, we can say this is later undercut by. So we might say Lady Macbeth is in control and manipulating Macbeth like a puppeteer. Yet this is later undercut by Macbeth's growing independence and detachment from her. So that is a guide to bridging phrases. They're a great way to create cohesion in your essays, and they're a nice way to get yourself bumped up in the grade boundaries and to write better essays for your future as well.